Good. Hello, Faithful Politics family. Welcome back. And if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, we're glad to have you. This week we have André Gagné.
Yes. Good job, Will.
Who's a full professor in the Department of Theological Studies at Concordia. He has a conjoint PhD from the Université Catholique Louvain and the Université de Montréal. His teaching and scholarship focus on political theology, religious and political violence, the Christian right, neo-charismatic Pentecostalism, evangelicalism, and the interpretation and reception of the Bible. He's been featured and interviewed in a whole bunch of media outlets to include the New York Times, Washington Post, Al Jazeera, and a whole bunch more. And we are just thrilled to have him on our show today. So welcome, Andre.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for having me. Very kind of you to extend this invitation. I'm very, very happy.
Yes, thank you.
And I guess happy belated Thanksgiving to you.
Oh yeah.
Is it the French Thanksgiving? What am I missing?
In fact, it was I think last week, if memory serves me right. Yes.
Canadian or French?
It's Canadian. It's a Canadian. I don't know if they have the equivalent. I'd have to see. Maybe in France. I'm not sure. But it's different. You guys is a month later. So,
yeah. Canadians have it's the second Monday of October.
Yeah.
So,
nice.
I love Canada, and especially I love Montreal specifically. Back in the before times, when I was a consultant, I used to do a lot of work for Cirque du Soleil, who has.
Are you? Oh my goodness! This is Quebec Montreal trademark thing.
Yeah. I love it. And I love just like the culture, and I've been down there a number of times, especially like around Canada Day. I've got friends out there, so. It's pretty neat. So anyways, we're not here to talk about Montreal, or maybe we are, I don't know. But I'm curious, Professor, if you can maybe just tell us what made you want to get into this field of study? You're a professor in Canada and you're studying the religious right here in America. I mean, it seems like an odd match for some reason.
Yeah, it's a question that is asked often. My initial training is actually in biblical studies. So I actually specialize. That's my area. My first area of specialization is biblical studies. So my BA, MA, PhD were in biblical studies, doing exegesis, learning the ancient languages and all of that. So I've done a lot of that. And, as you're pursuing your career, you do everything you have to do to become a professor. You publish, you lecture on your areas of specialization, but you also question yourself on what you're doing. You try to understand the relevance of what you're doing. And at one point, I kind of was questioning myself in terms of, okay, I know all of this about the Bible. I know how some Christians read the Bible. I understand the ancient reception of biblical text, but also the modern reception of biblical texts. And I see that in our politics, even sometimes here in Canada, less so, but in America especially, there is a love of the Bible. There is a familiarity with the Bible. So how can I use my initial training to speak to these things in terms of biblical scholarship, how the Bible is received in some of these communities, and sometimes these communities that take a political turn. I have a course, for example, here that I teach at Concordia that's called Bible and U.S. Politics, where we look at how the Bible is used in the context of politics in the U.S. Sometimes we try to make some connections with what we encounter here in Canada, but as you know, Canada is extremely secular. The role of religion is not necessarily the same, or the place of religion is not necessarily the same, and that is even particularly more so in Quebec. That's even more secular, that aligns itself, at least in its views as a society, closer to what you have in France, the laïcité, the French laïcité that we see in France. So of course, especially the colorful personage of Donald Trump coming on the scene in 2016, and you see some evangelicals supporting Trump and using biblical language, biblical figures to kind of characterize the figure of Trump. Of course, I was often asked by the media, what do you do with that? What do you do with people using the Bible, talking about Trump? How can devout Christians support Trump? All of these questions came up to me in a sense, and that's where I use my area of specialization and try to make it more relevant. In a sense, not just talking about ancient texts and or ancient context, but trying to understand this in our contemporary world.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like I'd imagine if you were a biblical scholar 10 years ago, you probably never would have thought you would have been called by the media.
Biblical scholars learning ancient Greek and Hebrew and working with apocryphal texts like the Gospel of Thomas, learning Coptic stuff. Never. It never would have crossed my mind. But when you kind of try to, look at your own career and try to measure maybe the social dimension of your career or the kind of the social responsibility that you have as a scholar, that's when I started realizing, okay, maybe there's something that I can connect my work with to contemporary issues. And that's how it happened. I never in my life would have thought 10 years ago that I would be in the media somehow.
They'd be asking you about Donald Trump. Did you ever imagine that?
You see that Donald Trump person there? He got a lot of us, getting involved, and he got a lot of books written. He got
he did.
A lot of podcasts.
Yes, he did.
Oh my goodness! Yes,
he's a job creator. I mean,
absolutely. You can't.
The greatest job creator ever.
Yeah. So I guess within kind of that vein of Protestant Christians in America, there's a small sliver that I'm especially interested in. And anybody I've ever asked said that you're the person to kind of help unpack some of the more, I don't know, like awkward things about the religious right. And just to kind of set the stage for those that are listening or watching that aren't really necessarily steeped in kind of all the, I don't know, controversy, there's a few terms that I love for you to maybe kind of unpack and for us to define as I'm sure we're going to be using them quite a lot. So the first term is NAR, the new Apostolic Reformation, Dominionism, and maybe fivefold ministry.
Okay, this is important. And I'm happy that you're doing this, and we're trying to do this, as you probably saw. I've paired with a veteran journalist by the name of Frederick Clarkson.
Yep.
And we've written a couple of pieces that he entitled and he thought would be good for reporters to kind of unpack this language, because a lot of people are reporting on this and sometimes it's a bit like out there and they're not used to it. And of course they have deadlines, so they don't always have the time to research this in depth. So the NAR, we often use that NAR. It's the NAR, but it's NAR, New Apostolic Reformation. It's essentially a movement. It's not a denomination. It's not an organization. It's more of a movement. We often credit that movement as having been spearheaded by a person by the name of C. Peter Wagner, who was a missiologist and church growth specialist that worked at Fuller Theological Seminary for 30 years. Before that, he had been a missionary in Bolivia for a couple of years, and then was invited to take over the chair of church growth from Donald McGarvin at Fuller. And Wagner's itinerary is interesting because he was very much interested in church growth. McGarvin had encouraged him to look into the churches that grow the most. And for him, these were the types of Pentecostal / charismatic churches that were growing in various countries, and even some growing in the U.S. So, of course, he got interested in that. So he looked at how these churches operated. And he started noticing that, like in the 90s, he started noticing churches that emphasized ideas around apostles, the apostolic, churches that labeled themselves as being apostolic churches that functioned with, and we'll define this in a few minutes, with the fivefold ministry idea. So he tried to wrap his mind around what these churches were, and he was struggling to kind of label them. At one point, he was talking about like maybe a new apostolic kind of organization or something, and eventually he came up with that name, New Apostolic Reformation. So his idea is that God was restoring apostolic leadership in congregations, that the next move of God for him, and of course it wasn't only for him, you had other important players around that time, people like apostle prophet Bill Hammond, that had been talking or laying out a kind of a history since the middle of the 20th century of the progressive restoration of what is called the fivefold ministry, which are apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers. And we'll come back to that in just a few minutes. But essentially, he turned that coin. He coined that term. He coined that term, New Apostolic Reformation, in the 90s. And really in 1999, he wrote a book called Churchquake, the New Apostolic Reformation. And that book really triggered his idea that we are entering in a new era. In some interviews, he talks about, for him, it really started in 2001, but he was already reflecting on this idea. We often credit him as being the founder of this movement, even if he says he isn't, or he always denied not being the founder, but he actually coined the term. So, and he used it a lot. If he was extremely prolific as a writer. And if you look at his subsequent publications after this, it really focuses on this idea of New Apostolic Reformation that brings about this idea of apostolic governance in churches. Now, maybe we can go to the fivefold ministry right away and then talk about the Dominionism aspect after, because it blends in with this idea of a New Apostolic Reformation. And you have the word apostolic there. So it focuses on apostolic governance, that apostles and prophets have a prominent place in the body of Christ and a prominent function in the body of Christ as being the ones that give, especially apostles, that give and steer the community of believers towards a vision given by God. So apostles have a primary role of leadership in communities. They often are paired with prophets that kind of work together. Prophets hear from God, and they kind of share what they hear from God to apostles, and apostles set things in motion. Apostles are the one that give the direction. So this idea of the fivefold ministry is an idea that comes from the book of Ephesians, the letter to the Ephesians, in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 to 13, specifically verse 11, that speaks about Christ giving gifts to men, and it talks about these fivefold gifts, apostles, prophets, evangelists, teachers, and pastors. Now, in churches, usually what you encountered are pastors. You have pastors, you have teachers, you might have evangelists also. But it was rare that people went around and called themselves or appropriated the title apostle or prophet for themselves. You see, it's very rare. Yeah. You would see this more in types of charismatic churches or Pentecostal churches. The early Pentecostals at the beginning of the 20th century, end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, some of them really believed in the fivefold ministry. They believed that there were apostles and prophets, and even in these end times, they thought they were in the end times. And this was picked up over again later on by a group of Pentecostals that eventually left the Pentecostal movement, a group called the New Order of the Latter Rain in 1948, which is a kind of restorationist movement that actually emerged from Saskatchewan, Canada, in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, in Canada, and then that revival spread throughout the world. So a lot of this idea of the restoration of these offices, because again, you know, that they will be talking about not only spiritual gifts of apostles and prophets and so on, but they also see these as offices and that have a certain authority. So the New Apostolic Reformation kind of brings back to that to the fore. It kind of reactivates this idea that you know was there at the beginning in early Pentecostalism, but then kind of lost its way a bit, and then picked up again through the New Order of the Latter Rain, and then eventually attaining what we call now the third wave of the Spirit in the 1980s, and of course popularized very much by C. Peter Wagner. So New Apostolic Reformation is about that. It's about apostolic governance. Now, the term Dominionism is it's essentially, I think, the best definition that was given by people on studying this was Fred Clarkson and Chip Burleigh. I think they were exploring ways to kind of define this political theological idea, where essentially Dominionism is this theocratic idea. This is how they define it: the theocratic idea that Christians are called by God to exercise dominion in the world by taking control of cultural and social and political institutions. So that's Clarkson's and Burleigh's definition. It encompasses a lot of things, because you can speak of various types of dominionisms. You can, when we think about dominionism often, and when you see this, commented by people either on Twitter or online or whatever, they're going to often refer to Christian Reconstructionism with R.J. Rushdoony or John Rosas Rushdoony. So that's one form of dominionism. But there's other forms of dominionism. And what happens in the New Apostolic Reformation is a kind of merge of two prominent streams of dominionism, which would be the Reconstructionist perspective from Rushdoony, but another one that originally had its roots in the New Order of the Latter Rain in 1948, but that expressed itself anew through a theology that is called Kingdom Now theology, that emerged in the 1980s among some Pentecostals, charismatics. We think about, for example, Bishop Earl Polk, for example, who very much popularized this idea of Kingdom Now. So the New Apostolic Reformation, when we're talking about being it a dominionist movement, would be that movement that, of course, seeks in some form to, they will say, influence, because they don't want to, when you hear some of these people, we're influencers. But in the end, it's really to take, in a sense, a certain control of cultural institutions and bring about social transformation, which people will say, what's wrong with that? What's the problem with that?
Yeah.
The problem could be that, maybe their project is not taking into account liberal democracies and the pluralism that we live in, either in America or Canada or other places. You see, it is not a pluralistic project per se.
No.
So I don't know if that answers some of your.
Oh yeah, I mean that's very in depth, and I love it. I've been just recently really starting to look into the NAR, New Apostolic Reformation, and C. Peter Wagner. I've heard about it before, but never really understood it. And I'm in a doctoral program right now, actually at AGTS, Assembly of God Theological Seminary. And I started to look at it, and I'm like looking up like spirit, Pentecostal leadership, because I'm doing a paper on that. And then it's there. And I'm like, what is going on with this? And I'm looking at the Seven Mountain Mandate. And maybe you can, I know that you kind of referenced some of that, but maybe you could describe the Seven Mountain Mandate in the next question. Yeah. But so I want to read a statement that they came out with, which you probably read. I don't want to put you in a weird spot, but it's the one that's the NAR and Christian Nationalism statement. And it comes to this place where they say, in short, we affirm that the spirit of the true apostles and prophets should exemplify the attitude and lifestyle of Jesus, coming alongside of other church and workplace leaders to serve them, not replace them. In short, we deny any affiliation with what is presently characterized as NAR in many circles, both Christian and secular. We also believe that reports of an alleged conspiratorial, worldwide, dangerous NAR movement are highly exaggerated and misleading. As for Christian nationalism, we recognize that for some, this simply refers to a healthy form of Christian patriotism, of loving God and loving one's country. In the sense that term is benign. So you have this reaction that they've come out against. So my question, what I understood is that they see themselves as apostles at the same level of authority as, say, Paul or Peter or any of the other apostles, John or James or any of them. So what is going on exactly with this NAR? Okay, so the Seven Mountain Mandate, what is it, and what's and are they really taking their apostolic authority to that level? Yeah. And what do you make of that statement? Yeah. I know that's kind of 3 in 1, but they're all related.
But that's great. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
In fact, if your listeners are interested, Fred Clarkson and I responded to this thing.
Nice.
In Religion Dispatches.
I'm interested.
You can check it out. And I could send you the link if you're interested after.
Yes.
We actually responded to this. There's of course, the old, in this statement, it's the old usual Dominionism denial. They're always denying that. They've always been denying that. But when you go to their websites and you go and you read their documentation, it's a complete contradictory statement that they're making. You can just go and surf, and we've uncovered this in our response. We put links to the stuff that they say that corresponds to NAR ideas, and they say no, that's not what we are. You see, so it's the usual denial that has been along. We had this type of denial a few years back with in another political situation at the time of Rick Perry. No, we're not that. C. Peter Wagner at one point had to go on NPR and explain that NAR was not a cult and so on. So they've been in this PR kind of damage control environment for a long time. Even one of the signatories at one point denied even the existence of the NAR from a piece that we had written in August.
Wow!
And then we asked him question if he was still part of this, NAR network, and he said, "Yes, I'm still part of it." So you're not denying that it is still in existence. So they're not denying anymore. They're more careful. They used to actually deny the very existence of the New Apostolic Reformation. Now they're not that. We're not what it is characterized as. That they're kind of more careful. Now, you're absolutely right. The issue of the apostles, they're going to say often, and even in one of the previous statements, they launched another statement in April 2021 called the Prophetic Standards. You remember when they had the the failed prophecies around Trump's reelection. So there were a lot of so-called prophets and people that had predicted that Trump would in a sense be reelected, and it didn't happen. So they had to issue a statement on regulating prophecy. And they had to kind of explain, what prophets are, and they're not like Old Testament prophets and so on. They're doing the same with the apostles. Now, it's true up to a certain extent that they would not dare equating themselves to the 12, you see, because the 12 were really chosen by Jesus and so on. But nonetheless, they still quote verses like Ephesians 2:20 and, Ephesians 4:11. Ephesians 2:20, it says that the church of God is built on the foundation of apostles and prophets. And they don't say that these apostles and prophets are necessarily the 12. You see, it's still applicable for them as prophets.
Right.
So despite saying they're not equal, sometimes it's not very clear if they don't share this kind of equality with the apostles. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they would not see themselves as equal. Nonetheless, they still exercise an important amount of authority. They often quote passages, for example, in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 28, that says that God in the church has first established apostles, then the prophets, then those that heal, and so on. And I remember Wagner, it was very clear. Wagner was saying apostles are first. So there's a need for apostolic governance in their system. This is why they talk about, for example, apostolic centers. Like the language, you see, the language of the NAR, it's a grammar in and of itself that you have to learn. Like you have to read their books, you have to listen to their sermons, the stuff that they do online, because it becomes difficult for, the ordinary Christian to figure out what they're talking about. You see, when they're talking about apostolic centers, for example, are apostolic centers churches? Because you have some NAR teachers that will say that God has been doing something different now we're not talking about churches per se anymore. We're talking about apostolic centers because God functions now. It's a new season and he uses a new wineskin. So God uses new wineskins to bring about his purposes. And these centers are now the manifestation of this new way of doing things, that God is doing something different. They're always talking about apostolic networks. So if apostles, the apostolic is not that, important, and they're just normal servants, why always focus on apostles? Now, the idea of the Seven Mountains Mandate, this is important because it's tied to the Seven Mountain Mandate is the New Apostolic Reformation's mobilization strategy. Okay, it's not a theology because sometimes people talk in terms of the theology of the Seven Mountains. It's not a theology. The theology is Dominionism. The political theology is Dominionism. The Seven Mountains Mandate is how you make dominion happen. Essentially, how do you get to dominion? So those are the seven spheres: religion, education, the family, media, arts and entertainment, politics, and business. So you have seven spheres. Now, the NAR did not invent those spheres. These spheres existed. It's actually credited to, just to give you a bit of information background, it's actually credited to two individuals in 1975, Lauren Cunningham and Bill Bright, that got together at one point, and they kind of said that both independently of each other, God revealed to them somehow a strategy to help the church change society.
And Bill Bright was Campus Crusade for Christ.
Absolutely.
Lauren Cunningham was Youth with a Mission.
That's it.
YWAM. Okay.
Exactly.
Just to make, those organizations.
Thank you for that. It's good, Josh. Thank you. So yes. So both of them separately had this kind of view of how to, affect culture. At the time, they talked about mind molders. They said that these areas were what shaped culture. And if you can penetrate those mind molders, you can transform culture. Eventually, someone by the name of Lance Wallnau, who is this kind of businessman, entrepreneur, for some, he is understood to be a prophet. He wrote a book on Trump, God's Chaos Candidate in 2016, and so on. He came out, he used those spheres or those mind molders, and he came out with the idea of mountains, 7 mountains. The goal of Christians would be to, he says influence, but it's actually penetrate those mountains, those cultures, to attain the top of those cultures, the summit of those cultures, in order to transform those cultures. But you need to get to the top of those cultures. So if we have Christians in leadership positions at the top of these mountains, we will be able to transform the culture. Now, the problem is, for him, at least how he understood that, is that these 7 spheres or these 7 mountains are under demonic influence. And we need to engage, for him at least, in his understanding, Christians need to engage in spiritual warfare to be able to conquer each of these summits in order to implement kingdom thinking. You see? So this is how you bring about dominion, in a sense. This is how you bring about the kingdom of God, by penetrating culture and changing culture through your, of course, he's going to talk about influence, but that's understood, that could be understood on a scale depending on who you're talking to, because there's people that are very scared with this language of dominionism. I remember, just as an aside, a conversation that Wallnau had with 2 other individuals. I think it was in 2007, 2008. There was this guy by the name of Os Hillman. Lance Wallnau was there, and this other individual by the name of Johnny Enlow. And they were talking about the Dominionism thing, the 7 mountain mandate thing. And Hillman, he's interested in, changing culture, especially in terms of the business world. So he was asking a question to Wallnau and Enlow at the time, and he's saying, we're talking about Dominionism, taking over, this language of taking over, and that scares a lot of people. Is that the right way of talking about it, And Wallnau at the time, it's interesting, you can find the video actually on YouTube very easily. Wallnau says, when we talk about, taking over, a city, or taking over culture or dominion, he says, this is language for internal consumption. This is for people that are insiders. And he says, when I'm talking with the media or other people, I'm not going to use that language. It's going to scare people off. You have to adjust your rhetoric to your audience. And Enlow was beside him. And Enlow, by the way, since that time, he wrote like 3 books on the 7 Mountains Mandate. like 3 books just on that, But Enlow was saying, maybe we shouldn't use the term dominionism, Maybe we should avoid this term. But they haven't been avoiding, or they're trying to minimize it by saying, Jesus was the first dominionist because he said, all power was given to me in heaven and on earth, and he's the first dominionist, and he's calling us to preach the gospel. But it's interesting how they use what that means. You see, Jesus, in his commission mandate in Matthew 28, he says, go and make disciples of, the individuals of people, and have them, been baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. They're going to focus so much on discipling nations. You see, their idea is not making disciples. It's discipling nations. It's aligning nations to the idea of the kingdom of God, because, of course, they have this entire idea of sheep nations and goat nations, and sheep nations are those that are aligned with God's kingdom, and goat nations are those that either persecute Christians or Israel and so on, or reject God's kingdom. So that's the type of language that they use. And then they're going to say, no, the Dominionism, we don't understand. In that statement that you read elsewhere, they're going to say, we don't even know people that talk about Dominionism. So it's disingenuous to say that. It's just, I think, like we talked, Fred and I, they're in panic mode. And they have to kind of make sure that, they have to have a statement somewhere. The two people that wrote this statement was Michael Brown and Joseph Matera, who is the convening apostle of the U.S. Coalition of Apostolic Leaders, which is a movement that's under the International Coalition of Apostolic Leaders. And the International Coalition of Apostolic Leaders is led by John P. Kelly, who is also an apostle. So come on,
Yeah, I'm curious. So I think one of the things I love the most about our podcast is, so I'm the liberal progressive, and Josh is the conservative Republican pastor, right? And with that, we have a pretty wide spectrum of listeners, viewers, what have you. And I'm curious, like when I first came across, or I first heard about, the New Apostolic Reformation, Seven Mountain Mandates, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders. I'm like, who cares? And I'm sure there's a lot of people not within sort of the faith community that are just like, yeah, that's just those crazy Christians, and when Michael Flynn is up there talking about whatever armor of God or whatever, that's just Christianese, and it doesn't really matter to me. So I'm curious on, like, why should non-Christians, non-believers care about, this movement or this change that we're seeing?
It's important because, for example, when you take the presidency of Trump, for them, Trump was this new Cyrus that God had chosen. And some of them, I'm thinking about Rob McCoy, who's a pastor in California, says, Trump is the perfect example of someone that knows how to navigate the Seven Mountains Mandate. He's successful in business. He masters Twitter, not anymore. But he's in a position politically to actually bring about things in society that will help us with our message. And we are now experiencing the legacy of Trump. You see, the three conservative judges that were placed on the Supreme Court justices, the 300 federal judges that he appointed during his mandate, the transfer of the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, that was ecstatic for a lot of people that have a particular view of the end times and Israel's role. So it plays at the geopolitical level. It plays in terms of democracy. It plays in terms of pluralism. So yes, people should be concerned. And you're right, Will, in saying, a lot of people, and sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes even it could happen in media outlets that labeled them as crazy people. But we have to be careful. When people are labeling them as crazy or nutcases, or these are not, we're kind of minimizing the threat, in a sense, that this could have on democracy up to a certain extent, because when Trump was there, he had his Evangelicals for Trump council. He had Paula White Cain. He was listening to Paula White Cain. And you remember during, many times what this does. Paula White Cain opening prayer meeting, not prayer meetings, opening campaign rallies in prayers and doing spiritual warfare prayer, demonizing political adversaries, asking God to protect Trump and his family against the deep state, affairs, and these are demonic networks that are trying to work against. You're demonizing political adversaries. You're contributing to an already extremely polarized political atmosphere in America that will fuel eventually violence. We've seen it with January 6th. A lot of the people that are supposedly not NAR were there. They were embracing the big lie and the push that this should not go through, that Biden should not be president. So it's a threat to democracy, in a sense, to the proper functioning of elections. And you have, of course, with this mix, now you're seeing these rallies, these political, I would call them political/religious types of rallies.
The ReAwaken
the religious, because there's, up to a certain extent, the ReAwakening, yes, the ReAwakening tour. They're religious up to a certain extent, because you have these religious characters with this religious rhetoric going on, but it's a melting pot of everything. You have Flynn, you have QAnon stuff, you have them, you have spiritual warfare, and they're galvanizing individuals, and these people will go vote, okay, and that's going to have an impact on the future of America. And this is why people have to take this extremely seriously. And I'm happy to see that mainstream media is more and more taking these people seriously. A few years back, you couldn't talk about the Christian right, not in the way that we're talking about it now. There was a lot of denialism related to even the political the political impact that the Christian right might have. At one point, even people thought that the Christian right was dead. So no, it's not dead. It's really well alive today. So I think it's looking at all of this, people should pay attention.
Yeah, I was thinking, not only is it concerning for those who are not Christian, but I think it should be especially concerning for those who are. And especially for those who, like myself, would consider themselves Pentecostal or charismatic in theology, because essentially now, I even heard on one of our shows, we have Anthea Butler, Dr.
Yes.
Anthea Butler, yeah, and she actually mentioned you and how you guys had were colleagues at some level, and
yeah.
And she but she said Pentecostal is like NAR and Pentecostal are essentially becoming like the same thing in the mind of so many people.
Yeah, in the mind of a lot of people, yes.
And that's very, very concerning for me, and I'm very concerned. And my wife was very concerned. One thing I was talking with her about it, and
yeah.
As we were kind of wrestling with this back and forth, because like Bethel, they would be a major church. What are some other major churches that we would know, like that have made mainstream? Would Hillsong be a part of that?
Hillsong is a bit of a different network, and you know that Hillsong is really Pentecostal.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of a different stream, I would say. I would not necessarily enter them there. Some would see Gateway probably as those types of churches. We have to look at independent types of churches,
right?
Things like the Church on the Rock or the Rock Church. I never remember. Is it the Church on the Rock? Che-An in in California, things like that. And they work a lot also with networks. The thing with the NAR, it's essentially an ecclesiology. Eh? When you think about it, it's an ecclesiology. It's a way of understanding church governance with the emphasis of apostolic leadership. That just penetrates its ideas that permeate congregations, and congregations sometimes don't even know where this comes from.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're going to say, hey, this is NAR. What is this? Like, they don't know what you're talking about because it just has blended itself in the general culture of a lot of Pentecostal/charismatic churches.
And I've been a part of them, and I've seen it in friends. I've heard pastors tell me, well, you know that Hillary Clinton is demon possessed, right? That's what I've had a pastor literally say that to me. Of a larger church, like as in, like this is common knowledge that she's demon possessed. And I sometimes I don't even know where to start with some of these things. And so I guess when my wife and I were talking about it, we were talking about the hermeneutics behind it, like how are they even getting here? Could you walk us through some of that and then maybe help us understand, like, okay, so some people believe in fivefold ministry, but they're not in this.
They're not in NAR. That's it.
So what's I'm even personally wrestling with fivefold ministry, what it means. Is it something that's even like legitimate? And I'm wrestling myself with it. But I would love your insight into that. Like, how are they getting here exegetically and hermeneutically, and how are they, and help us understand where they're going wrong with it.
The thing is, this is a great question, Josh. It's a complex one because, they're readers of the Bible. And as a reader of the Bible, we all engage. We're all engaged in hermeneutics. The Bible doesn't speak on its own. we're situated individuals with our own experiences, and that colors our reading. It affects the way we understand things. So we know that in Pentecostal circles, for example, the hermeneutic is often very subjective in terms of Pentecostals sometimes see themselves in the narratives that they read. You see, they understand that stories of liberation, they appropriate that for themselves. You see, that the thing about Pentecostalism, the beautiful thing is this restoration element of liberation. And this is where we as scholars, and you as a pastor and others that have to address that, is that we need to really be specific when we're talking about certain things. When we're talking about the NAR, we have to be specific in defining exactly what that means for these people, but then differentiate what we mean by Pentecostalism. What is a Pentecostal? What's the emphasis? And go back to our, the Pentecostals' historic roots and self-understanding of that, and how, in some cases, the Assemblies of God, they react. When there was the New Order of Latter Rain stuff in 1948, they reacted to that. The Assemblies of God did not agree with that, and that created problems for the New Order, which, the people that were part of the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, which were kind of paired with the with the Assemblies of God in America, they left the movement, you see? So there was a clear stance on the part of denominations, which the NAR doesn't like. The NAR doesn't like denominations. It's a post-denominational movement at the same time. So the accountability element is not as prevalent. There's going to be a kind of accountability to apostles, but it's more they kind of want to see their networks as relational more than anything else. So I think it's coming back to what is Pentecostalism, the essence of what it is, what it's meant, how Pentecostals read the Bible. At the same time, it's what you do with this. Like the NAR, what they do is they read the book of Acts, for example, okay? And they're going to read, like in the book of Acts, there was a major church, let's say in Antioch. And then there was another major church that developed maybe in Corinth, and another major church in Rome. And they're gonna kind of inject their view of what they call apostolic centers into their hermeneutic. They're gonna say, you see, these were actually apostolic centers. But the Bible doesn't say that. You see, the Bible just talks about a church. There were apostles and prophets there. So it's coming back to sticking really with Scripture, what it says. They kind of already have a marketing scheme in their minds, like the Seven Mountain Mandate and all of that. It's already there. They placate those ideas to the Bible. That's essentially what they do in a first instance.
But you don't find Seven Mountain Mandate in the Bible.
You're going to have seven mountains as a symbolic thing in the book of Revelation. You know, like the beast is sitting on the seven hills. Okay, you're going to have that, but it's not going to explain to you that these hills are education,
religion, education, business.
You see, it's not there.
Yes.
But that's it. So their hermeneutic is very fanciful. It's if you read Johnny Enlow's books on the seven mountains, he's going to read the book of Joshua. He's going to start from the book of Joshua. Okay. This conquering mentality is going to start from the book of Joshua, and he's going to look at the enemies, the enemies of the Israelites in the land that they had to conquer. You know, there was like 6 or 7 nations, and he's going to parallel these nations to mountains. You see, so he's injecting himself in the text, or his view in the text. This is not like expository, what you would understand as being expository preaching or teaching. A lot of these people don't know the ancient languages. You know, they that's it. It's very fanciful. And it's often based on revelations that they have. You know, they've read scripture and they felt that God was moving them there and showing them that this corresponds to this event. They do a lot of news exegesis. You know, the exegesis of the news. You know, something happens in politics in America, and then they're going to find a verse somewhere to kind of connect that with something. Like, how do you come up with Trump as being the new Cyrus? Like, you know, like just that. Lance Wallnau, his entire theory that Trump is this new Cyrus figure is that one day he felt the Holy Spirit telling him, go to Isaiah 45. Go to the book of Isaiah 45. Then he goes to the book of Isaiah 45, and you can read it in this book. He tells you. And then he starts reading, and Cyrus, my chosen one, he will break the doors and free the captives and all of that. And then he had a revelation. Isaiah 45, the 45th president of the United States. Trump, Cyrus. You see, so, like, come on. Nobody is going to read Isaiah 45 is going to see Trump there. You see, so it's really kind of this fanciful exegesis that is not controlled by any kind of mechanisms that we use when we read the Bible. We use historical grammatical tools that help us understand the context in which a text was written, and it doesn't always apply directly to us. We can gain ideas or insights from biblical text, yes, but sometimes you need to understand the context of a text. You can't just jump directly without understanding what this context is about. So it's that kind of fanciful, uncontrolled hermeneutic that kind of goes all over the place, and it's really based on impressions of what they deem to be impressions of the Spirit. But yeah, they have an idea set, and it's often patterned from other ideas. You see, they're not necessarily original. Like what we said about the fivefold ministry and all of that. The early Pentecostals, they had that, but they kind of overemphasized that. They pick up where, there were exaggerations on that, like New Order of the Latter Rain, for example. The overemphasis on the authority of that fivefold ministry, instead of just understanding that these ministries as gifts, as any other spiritual gift. Wagner liked to kind of differentiate between situational gifts and more temporary gifts. Like there were spiritual gifts, because he's not a Pentecostal. He's an evangelical that became a neo-charismatic. So situational gifts versus more, I would say, permanent gifts like the offices that we've talked about. Whereas prophecy or healing or other things would be more situational in terms of how they operate. But you see, these are distinctions that he makes. The Bible doesn't really tell you that. do you understand? So it's a combination of marketing, of spiritual impressions, of a bit fanciful, exegesis. I don't even know if I think it's more eisegesis than exegesis.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know if it answers Josh, but I think
very good. I mean, I appreciate it.
For Pentecostals, is to set
the
bar, to be very clear what Pentecostalism is.
Yeah, I'm curious if there's any or what your thoughts are of like Christian nationalism, because that's a term that I hear a lot, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts if there's a tie-in to NAR, and I'll give you two examples, or maybe three examples that have come up recently that sort of got my attention. Was so there's a movement in the United States called the National Conservatism Movement, and they came out with a statement. Basically saying, where Christian majority exists, public life should be rooted in Christianity and its moral vision, which should be honored by the state and other institutions, both public and private. And then there's another organization, an offshoot kind of from Trump, Stephen Miller kind of runs it, called America First Legal Group. And they issued a statement. This was shortly after the Kennedy v. Bremerton decision about the coach who prayed on the 50-yard line or what have you. They issued a statement calling for a total overhaul of the Establishment Clause in the United States, where they're basically is like, who needs it, whatever, and only just a few weeks ago, the Family Research Council held a seminar or some sort of and they were discussing Christian nationalism, and basically, the big takeaway was like, no big deal, So I'm curious if the Christian nationalists in this country, if there's a tie-in with NAR, or is it just, are they one and the same? And what I just mentioned is just sort of the activist part of the NAR philosophy.
Yeah, it's interesting. What Josh read at their statement is NAR and Christian nationalism. So they see the kind of it kind of goes a bit together, but essentially Christian nationalism is this idea that, America is a Christian nation from its founding. And of course it focuses more on the Puritan narrative when they arrived in, Massachusetts, and that it's like all the history is just focused on that aspect, forgetting that there were other colonies where there was more pluralism and so on. So Christian nationalism is about that. So anything that really pushes an agenda where Christianity is not to be regarded as any other religion, but should be the primary religion, that's Christian nationalism. And of course, for NAR, that fits. Because they don't see the other religions as equal to Christianity. Like Christianity is the exclusivistic message, and the other religions, they're false religions. Like it's very clear. C. Peter Wagner, for him, these other religions are false. This is untrue. You shouldn't follow that. So it's not from the start a pluralistic view of society, and it's considering Christianity superior to anything else, and it's the social and political institutions of the country should be controlled or should be profoundly marked by Christian ideas. So NAR, yes, and this in a sense is why they made that statement and put it together. It's interesting, that statement. They a Christian, you could be a Christian, you can be a patriot. We're not against we're more against extreme Christian patriotism. We could be an extreme Christian patriot. But what about like a Muslim patriot, or what about a Buddhist patriot, or I don't know, someone like an atheist patriot? Like, why a Christian patriot? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? So
well,
it's really putting that overemphasis and the supremacy of Christianity over all things. That
makes a lot of sense. I remember I've been reading about it, and I know that I heard the woman who, I don't know if it's actually later or not, but they had the camp that was the film Jesus Camp was based off of.
Yes.
And I was thinking, how would we feel, or how would, the American populace feel at large if there was a Muslim camp that was training Muslim youth, and they were dressed in military garb, and they were, using military language, whether or not they meant it, whether or not it was literal or not, we would not be okay with it.
No, we would freak out.
Yeah, we would freak out. Any, like you said, any religion beyond
that's it.
Anything beyond Christianity.
Yeah.
And this is the last question. Then we have a quick follow up. I have so many questions, but we're trying to keep it within us.
We should do this another time, also.
Yes,
we don't have to do an episode. We could just meet on Zoom if you guys.
I would love to do that and just talk with you. That would be amazing. But what? So let me have you do something that professors don't like to do, especially historians.
Yeah.
Predict the future. What do you think in 2024, with all of this stuff going around, what would be your statement to Christians? To Christians who are many on the right, what is your statement to Christians moving into this 2024 election? I mean, I know 2022, the midterms, that's fine, but even more, right? It's always bigger with the presidential. So what are your fears? What are your concerns? And what do you want the church in America, what message do you want them to hear?
So my fears and concerns, of course, there's been, even during the Trump 2020 election, people were talking about civil war. You never know. You see, you had the January 6th. What's going to happen in the midterms is going to be it's going to give us a feel of maybe what could happen in 2024. This will not go away. That my fear is that it's going to amplify itself. It's not going to go away. People have latched on to something that for them gives them meaning. We have to say something about the right. They do have a narrative. You see that sometimes the left doesn't have. You see, and the right has always been very structured, has its networks, has the money. So this is not going to end. Even if Trump is not the chosen one. You have other people. You see, sometimes people are talking about DeSantis, but you have Doug Mastriano there in Pennsylvania. We don't know if he's going to win the governor's seat, but he started something. Mastriano started something, and he's actually a better fit for people like NAR than Trump was ever, because he's a Christian, and he has the language, he understands this, he blows shofars, he does all of this. You see? So he's a better fit for them. So I wouldn't be surprised. I would be the least surprised if this person, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if this person would not be a Republican presidential candidate. I would not be surprised. That's one thing. These are my fears. It's not going away. It's going to amplify. For the church, I think the church really needs to take this moment extremely seriously. It needs to get informed about what this is. And just not think, oh, these are just crazy people and they won't show up to vote. No, you have to go vote. And the church needs to really think about the beauty of America as an experiment of pluralism and freedom and democracy. And if you don't want to lose that or see this eroded, I think it's important to really weigh the choices that you have to make as individuals and really look at the bigger picture. It's not about being, Republican or not. It's not that. Look at what you want your country to be. Look at how you can make this polarization up to a certain extent less than it is now, if it's possible. Is it possible to talk with these people? I don't, maybe it's not. Maybe we're past that. But I think things will be really, really important in terms of the voting ballot. People have to go vote if they want to make sure and if they want to guarantee that their beautiful country remains what it is or gets back to what it was in its beauty years. That's what.
Well, if it all goes crazy, I'm moving to Canada, and I'm going to use you as a reference.
I know. A lot of people.
I know.
During the Trump years, I had people telling me, like, if I would move to Canada, could you sign something for me? Like, yeah, I know. No, people really freaking out.
Believe it. I have another pastor friend in Toronto who's in Canada, Canadian too. So that'd be so. Man, Professor Gagné, André, it was so nice to have you on the show. Question: how can people follow you? What's your next project? How can people keep up with what you're doing?
Okay, so they can follow me on Twitter. That's very easy. So if you guys post this on Twitter and you can tag me, they'll be able to follow me. I have on my Twitter bio, you can find a link to my faculty page. So if people want to write to me, you'll find all my coordinates there. You'll find the books that I wrote. You'll find even the op-eds that I recently write. People can consult my work. I also have a YouTube channel where I have videos that talk about the NAR and apostolic centers and all of that stuff. And, of course, my next project, now I'm in the process of completing a translation of my book. I wrote a book in 2020 called Ces évangéliques derrière Trump, Evangelical Supporters of Trump. I wrote it in French because it was a request by a European publisher who were really trying to wrap their minds around what's happening in America. It's hard for them to kind of, what's going on in the U.S. with Trump and evangelicals. So I wrote that book in French, which was really an eye opener for a lot of Europeans. It was a good success. But I had a colleague she's actually teaching. It's interesting. I think she was in the sciences at Buffalo University, State University, who reads French and read my book and said, you have to have that book translated. So Linda Shanahan contacted me and she said, I'll translate your book for free.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness, because I didn't have time to do that and everything. So she worked, really hard. And we managed to get a contract signed with Routledge. Hopefully we'll try to get this out in 2023. So that's the first thing I have to finish. I also would like to, I have two or three other projects, but two in particular, maybe writing a book for people that don't know about these groups in the Christian right. Like, what is Christian Reconstructionism, for example? What is NAR? Like a summary chapter on each of these types of groups, so that for people that want to have a quick access to this stuff, where does that come from? What is that?
That'd be excellent.
That would be useful. And the last thing is I'm very much interested in charismatic Pentecostal Christianity, and I would really like to write a history of that. Maybe starting with the holiness movement or something. I can't go too far back because it could be far, but maybe with the holiness movement, and then look at the development in the 20th century and where we are today, and maybe some of the political implications for some of these groups and so on. So these are my projects for the moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. This has been a great conversation. And guys, we're looking forward to getting your feedback, and please listen and watch wherever you're getting your podcasts and vodcasts. And thanks. Have a great week. We'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks.